Welcome to Black Engineers. Welcome to Black Engineers Career Advancement Masterclass Series. It is with the theme Proactive Approach to Job Search with Rick Venda, PhD. This is our agenda for today. We'll be welcoming you to today's session. There are some housekeeping items to take note of. We will let you know about the mission and vision of Black Engineers of Canada, in case it's your first time. How to join us subsequently, any upcoming events that we have, and would let you know a little about our presenter before you present, and you can ask your questions right after the presentation. These are some of the housekeeping items. This meeting would last for 120 minutes for 2 hours. Please note that this session is being recorded. If you are not muted, please mute your device. You can ask questions while the session is going on. Rick sometimes allows questions during his presentation. Otherwise, you can wait to the end of the meeting end of his presentation to ask your questions by using the raise hand feature on Zoom to signify that you have a question. The vision of Black Engineers of Canada is to create a world where Black people would excel in their chosen engineering profession without any limitations that are caused by societal biases. And the mission is to provide an enabling environment for growth and leadership by developing pathways to excellence for Black engineers and engineering graduates in Canada. And it is in line with this vision and mission that programs like this are being organized to align the objectives of the organization with the career needs of members of the community. These are some of our upcoming events. This event was mentioned last week and it's already held on Thursday. That was the last speed mentoring session for this year, 2023. Be on the lookout next year for more of this speed mentoring session and other events by this subcommittee, the training subcommittee, and other subcommittees at Black Engineers of Canada. This is our website where we get to update all information about all of our events and everything that has to do with Black Engineers of Canada. There is also a career center where Black Engineers of Canada has partnered with different organizations to bring career opportunities that are in line with the engineering training to members of the community. And any applications done on this career center will be given priority by the organizations for Black engineering professionals. For membership inquiries, if you want to be a member of Black Engineers of Canada, you can contact us via email at members@blackengineers.ca. For mentorship inquiries, mentorship@blackengineers.ca. And for partnership@blackengineers.ca. Also, you can become a member by getting involved on our website. You can see the portal there that says membership. Once you click on it, you fill a form that takes a minute or two and you become a member, which allows you to get information right to your inbox on future programs and events that come up at BEC. Meet our speaker. Rick Venda is a post-career mechanical engineer who worked most of his career in the high voltage electrical industry as a product design and application engineer, a project engineer, project manager, and departmental staff manager. Rick has hired many engineers and other technical staff in his career. Much of what he discusses is based on personal experience from being on both sides of the interview. One second. Rick graduated from the University of Waterloo in 1978 and has since been a professional engineer since 1980. For the past 13 years since retiring, Rick has been successfully mentoring many engineers on job hunting. Many of these people have had issues getting interviews and job offers, after which they approach him, and there are a lot of testimonials on his LinkedIn page that attest to the several success stories that Rick has helped Black engineering professionals and other engineering professionals to accomplish in recent times. Thank you. Rick, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Oye. Let me just get my, let's see here, share screen. By the way, I went through a lot of information last week. It was sort of a rushed presentation. Does anybody have any questions about what was discussed last week? If you do, please speak up and ask. Anybody? Okay, that's fine. That's great. If you ever have any questions, you can always contact me at this email address or get me through LinkedIn, and I'm happy to help you with whatever I can help you with, and leave it at that. So today we're going to talk about interview skills. So it's pretty common, you've sent in a whole pile of resumes, and finally you get a call back from HR saying we want to talk to you, and then they'll have a discussion with you, and they feel you're kind of right in the preliminary phone interview. They'll then invite you to either come in and do an interview with the hiring manager and his team, or they'll perhaps do a Zoom interview with you on your system. And I'll be discussing these two aspects with you today. So let's just get ahead on it. So first, it's called interviews. Oop, a little bit too crazy. Now, one of the first things you have to do when you're getting ready for an interview is you have to know exactly why you believe you're the right person for the roles you're pursuing. So you've got to really prepare for each and every interview, and you got to prepare in many different ways. You need to know the stories, accomplishments, the results, and the examples that showcase the value you could bring to the position. You shouldn't expect your resume to do all the storytelling for you, and you shouldn't expect the interview to remember every single thing they read on your resume just because they read it for the first time and decide to interview you. So you have to be prepared to talk about what you've done. I've always found I developed over many years ago, because I had quite a few jobs through my career, for my time anyways. Nowadays, the amount of jobs that people have actually exceed what I had. But I always found that storytelling really helped when they were asking me questions. Okay. You have to get good at knowing what you're good at and what you need to be able to communicate these things as easily as you can tell someone your phone number. So communication is a very, very big part of doing well in an interview. A lot of times, for example, with recent grads, I'd say about 90%, 80 to 90% of your chances of getting the job are based on how well you communicate, how well they like you, and how intelligent they feel you are. So if you don't communicate effectively in the interview, or you come across as shy and are hard to get information out of, your chances are not as good as that person who does have those skills. So it's very important that you work on those skills. One of the things I do is I do give mock interviews with people on Zoom. They'll call me up and say, Rick, I have this job interview coming up in a few days. Can you do a mock interview? And I say, sure. I prepare a bunch of questions. Most of them aren't technical. Most of them are about personal stuff, or they're about they're called behavioral questions. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And through that, I am able to evaluate them to see how things are going. I also evaluate how they're set up on Zoom. A lot of people get on Zoom with me, and I can't see them properly. And that could be a big hindrance in your ability to get a job. If they can't see you properly, and if there's some communication issue, your chances have gone way down from the person that, when they get on Zoom, they're easy to see, they're understandable, their microphone works well, and it makes a big difference. It's a small thing, but it can make the biggest difference in the world. So don't forget about these things I'll be talking about today, because they're all very important. There's nothing more frustrating than finally getting an interview after making so many applications, only to be rejected because you didn't come across very well, you didn't seem friendly, you were offstanding, you were shy, we couldn't see you very well, whatever it is. These things are all repairable, but you have to work at it. When you have good communication skills, your value on paper in person, you'll increase your chances of moving from application to interview to offer. And that's what we're trying to do, is we want to interview to a point that they like us so much that they're going to give us an offer. Okay. Winging it, some people wing it at interviews, and I really suggest that's not a good idea, especially in today's job market. With the market being so tight these days, with so many applicants every time they send out a job ad out in the internet, you know, they may get 100, 200 people applying. If you're one of the, say, the 10 people they really going to seriously look at, you don't want to blow it because you didn't prepare. So make sure you fully understand the requirements of the job. This is so critical. And make sure, if you think there may be questions around the requirements, how you'll answer them. It's a good idea also to find out who you're interviewing with and research them. Ask the HR people, so who's interviewing me? What's their email address? Look them up on LinkedIn. Find out what they're about. You can't always get everything on that, but you can certainly get usually at least the name, and the name may be enough to get a bit of an understanding about the person. And it may also help you with developing questions for that person when you actually get to meet them in an interview. Having good questions in an interview is very important. If you don't ask questions, or you come across as someone that, you might come across as someone who doesn't really care. Who doesn't really care or is too shy to ask questions. And most employers aren't looking for shy people, at least not as engineers. They may be looking for shy people in clerical positions, but they're not looking for that in engineers. They want engineers to be out there, working with other engineers, perhaps working with their clients, their customers, and this is a very important part of it. I just helped one fellow, a Black engineer, get a job. I had actually know the company. I used to work there at one time. I helped him by getting him by sending a note off to the vice president of that group. And he responded back, and he said he was very interested in the fellow. I helped him prepare for a presentation he did in front of them, and between, I think, the recommendation and the way it came across in the presentation, got him the job. He's been down there for about 2 weeks. So far, so good. He can have a really great career in that company. It is probably the best company I ever worked for. So it's very important that you get to know who you're working with and ask them the appropriate questions. I have about 15 articles about this presentation in my Dropbox folder, which you'll have access to review later. I did send Black Engineers Canada the link to the discussion we had last week, but this one will have my full Dropbox folder for you to review for this week. Okay. Now, it's very important that if they can't understand you, they will not hire you. Telephone interviews by HR are almost all about understanding you and your language comprehension. And if it's a problem, the chance of you getting a job is going to be minimalized. So you have to make sure that you get your accent to the point that Canadians can understand you. There's YouTube videos on the subject. A company called Speech Science in Toronto. There's a lady there, I think her name is Bonnie Gross. She does training on accent reduction. Try it if this is a problem. And I had this before where people come to me and I say, you know, you seem like a very nice person, but I don't really understand what you're saying. And if I can't understand you, chances are other people can. So if the issue is accent reduction, please consider this. It's a lot less expensive than getting a university degree and then getting out in the job market and not getting a job. This is a very important part of being successful in job hunting. You know, work on your voice. Try not to be monotone. It makes you sound very boring. You have to be outward. You have to change your pitch, your volume. You have to come across who someone's engaged in speaking. If you come across like a person like this and they kind of shy sounding, it's not going to do you any favors in the engineering world. It might be, again, for someone maybe getting a clerical job who's going to be sitting in a desk all day, pushing paper back and forth. That may be just fine. But if you're going to be an engineer working with their clients, working with other engineers, it's not necessarily to your advantage. And this is what you'll be evaluated for. You're not going to be just evaluated for your technical knowledge. You're going to be evaluated for these different points. Make sure you enunciate. Sometimes I notice words are spoken in such a way that they're difficult for Canadians to understand. Make sure you enunciate the words that we understand, okay? Because that will be held against you in an interview. One thing you can do is exercise with tongue twisters. I have a few of them here. The first one, James just jostled Jean gently. Another one you can practice is round the rugged rocks, the ragged rascal ran. Or silly Sally sells seashells by the seashore. That's a hard one. Silly Susan sells seashells by the seashore. That's something you may want to work on. If you find that you're having difficulty communicating well with other Canadians, you may want to consider this part, because this is very important in your ability to get jobs. Sometimes people don't want to hear this about themselves, but unfortunately, it is important and it has to be addressed. If not, your chances of success are very poor, especially if you're a newcomer to Canada with not a lot of experience in this country, or you're just out of school. These are two areas where it'll be very easy to find somebody who they can understand well and they feel will be a good fit for their group. If you got 20, 30 years experience and you have a great project list to work on, it'll probably be a little bit less of an issue. But if you're not that person, then it will be definitely an issue. Any questions? No? Okay.
None yet in the chat box.
Okay. Okay. During the interview, turn off your phone. Don't check your telephone during interview. I know it's somewhat of a nervous habit that people have. They'll look down at their phone, but this is considered to be somewhat rude. And I would suggest not doing it. Just turn the thing off before you walk into the interview room. Wear conservative business attire. You don't have to wear a tie, but I suggest a plain shirt, no plaid, no lined stripes, nothing that you can be criticized for. So just a plain shirt with a collar for men would work well. Women, suggest you wear a business suit or a dress. Do not put your going out makeup. I've had mock interviews with women. They put their Saturday night makeup on. They don't want to see that. Especially HR people. A lot of the HR people are women, and they see that guy. What's wrong with this person? This is not the way you go to an interview. This is not the way we want people dressing in the office. Okay, it's not about trying to find a mate. It's about trying to get a job. So no flashy colors, no patterns. And there's a good TED Talk Amy Cuddy does. There's a link in Dropbox about it, about confident posture, which is also important. You want to come across as someone who is confident, who they can trust to successfully do the work they're looking for. So I suggest you look at it. By the way, you'll all get, as I said earlier, you'll get access to the Dropbox, and there's a whole section on interview skills. I think there's, I don't remember how many documents there are, but there's several documents there. Some of this is some stuff I've actually written, and some of it is stuff I pulled off from other people have written. If I find an article that makes sense, I will put it in there. There's a lot of stuff out there on the internet. Some of it's useful, some of it's not. So I try to judge that. Now, virtual meetings. Of course, this became more of an issue during COVID. It's maybe becoming a little bit less of an issue these days, but very important things. Place the camera at eye level or even slightly higher than eye level. There's nothing worse than having a Zoom call with somebody and all you're doing is looking up their nose. I've had that happen before, and that doesn't look good on anybody. So always make sure that camera is higher than it should be at eye level or slightly above it, and you can put it on some books. You can put if you're using a laptop, you can either get a laptop stand that I show on the right side, or you can just put it on some books just to bring your unit up. It looks a lot better than that. Try to position the camera so your head is towards the top of the screen. As you can see in these pictures down below, there's too much room with this guy. You want to be able to put your camera so they can have a good look at your face. I had one fellow I was helping a few years ago. He was actually one of the black engineers, but he wasn't in a group. He came through a friend of mine who went to university with him. She's somebody I had done some volunteer work with several years ago, and he came through me. And one of the problems when we were doing our mock interviews is I couldn't see him very well. So I got him to buy a new webcam, because his camera in his laptop wasn't very good, and that seemed to make the biggest difference. When a few weeks he had a job, he had an interview, he did well in the interview, and he got a job offer. So don't negate the importance of having good audio visual equipment for doing interviews. It is important. It will make a difference. The most flattering light is when the light is in front of you and a little above, if possible. A lot of times I get people talking to me on Zoom, and all I can see is I can't see them at all because the lighting is from the back of them. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Sometimes it's better for you to be in front of a window. I'm in front of the window right here in my office at home, and it seems to help a lot. But if you don't have a window, you could use a lamp, or you can also purchase an inexpensive video light on well, wherever, but I typically get this stuff through Amazon. They seem to have a huge selection. Try to keep the space behind you clean and neat. Clutter makes your background less appealing, like mine does here. You can also dress up the background with a plant or an interesting antique, but not too much, just one or two items. Here's a webcam you can buy. These items are, and also a headset. Many times with headsets, I find that with the typical inexpensive laptops, the microphones are poor, and if someone has somewhat of an accent, it really helps to have a better headset. So I suggest buying someone with a microphone out in front. I remember there was one lady with black engineers. We had that problem. She bought a Logitech one. I think it was about $40 or $50. And she got a job fairly quickly after that. This Nexago webcam is supposedly very good, well rated. It's not the one that I'm using. I have a Logitech myself. Mine was about $100. This is what I'm using. Hopefully you folks can see me well, but that's what I've been using. But the Nexago, which is about $50, that is something that should be sufficient for jobs. Again, do not have the light source behind you. Try to have the light source in front of you. It can be an overhead light. There's a good picture of the next slide. So here's someone set up for a good Zoom call. She has her headset. She has her computer. Her computer is elevated. Her desktop is up. So she seems to have two computers going here, and she has a couple of light sources which light her up quite well. Try to have something similar to that. Any desk lamp will be helpful in this. I remember one fellow was helping with black engineers. We were having a problem with his lighting. And because, of course, with darker skin, you need more light to illuminate yourself. And his father had a couple of lights that he used for painting. These are the strong lights that his father was using. So he put a couple of those in front of them. And on stands, there were lights on stands. I think they're halogen lights. And that seemed to be able to get this fellow well focused in, and it was very easy to see his facial expressions and see him well when he was talking. Okay, so remember, don't cheap out on equipment. At the long run, it's not going to be being cheap will not help you. It only be helpful better if you got the equipment you need. Now, meeting, it's not an interrogation. It's not an interrogation. A lot of people act like it's an interrogation. It should be a two-way conversation, not just questions to be asked by the hiring team. Try to converse with the hiring team. You know, don't just answer their yes or no or anything like that. Tell them something, and you may want to ask, so So what's the basis for this question? Is this something you would want me to do? Listen tentatively, see what they say. You want to make it a conversation. You're trying to develop a relationship with the people you're talking to you, because they're going to decide at the end of the day, do I like this person or do I not like this person? Or I really don't care about this person. I don't get a positive, I don't get a negative. He's just sort of so-so. And so-so people typically don't get the jobs. It's the ones they like that gets the jobs. Please understand that. Storytelling, I talked about that earlier, is an effective way of making your point. Use your past experience as a story, okay? Don't just answer yes or no, or come up with a 10 or 15 word answer to your question. Tell them about a time you did something similar to what they were asking about. You know, you say something like, well, your question reminds me about a time where I had to do X, Y, Z, and then tell a little bit of a story about it, okay? Don't rush to respond. Think about the question, think about the question and answer first. Sometimes by repeating the question gives you a little time to think about an appropriate answer. Now, I'm not suggesting sitting there for 5 minutes while you come up with a good answer, but you should do not just pull it out of your head very quickly. You're certainly allowed 10, 15, 20 seconds to come up with an answer. Some people are going to be faster than others, just the way we're all made. We're all a little bit different, but don't rush through and give an answer, because sometimes you'll later decide, and I've been in that situation, that you're really regretful of the answer you gave. That could have basically, you could have lost the job on that. Matter of fact, the first job I ever got out of school was with a company in London, Ontario called 3M. And my answer to one of their questions lost me that job. I ended up getting a good job anyways, but 3M would have been a great company to work for, I think. So by making that mistake, by not thinking through why they were asking that question, really lost it for me in that particular position. I think they liked me otherwise, but because of this answer they didn't like, that got me. They even told me they didn't like the answer. So listen very carefully. Speak to everybody in the room and make sure to ask questions of everybody. So eventually you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions. Ask everybody a question. That's why it's so important, for example, to get their names so you know who you're talking to. But listen carefully. One of the problems I have had, especially hiring recent grads, is they don't listen carefully. They're already starting to answer the question before I even finish asking the question. I've hired many recent grads over the years. And that is not only, it's the point where, you know, obviously they're intelligent people, but they're not really listening to the full question. This is not a race. There's no race here. Take your time, listen carefully, look like you're listening carefully, and then speak to everyone in the room and make sure to ask questions. Like I said, make sure to ask questions of everybody. So don't just look at one person when you're answering questions. Look at everybody. If you're in a room, look at everybody. I remember one time I had an example. I was looking to hire this fellow. He was from the Middle East. He was an electrical engineer. And I was in the room with the HR person, this lady, who had some questions. You know, as an HR person, she has her own questions to ask. And she would ask her questions, he would answer to me. She would ask another questions, he would look at me. He would never actually look at her. And I'm going, what's wrong with this person? Why wouldn't he answer? Why wouldn't he look at her? So on that basis, and the fact that I did have some women in my department already, I think I had about 30% of the staff in my department were women. And I'm thinking, is this fellow going to be disrespectful to the women in my group? I don't think I want that. So for that reason alone, I didn't hire him. Okay. So make sure you look at everybody in the room. Everybody's important there. Everybody has a role to be there. They're all there to evaluate you and to see how good of a fit they think you are with their group. So don't forget that point. Very important. Okay. Cultural fit is an important factor in hiring. Again, try to learn about Canadian culture. It's very, very helpful in the hiring process. Prepare questions that are insightful of the company and the hiring manager. So again, part of getting ready for an interview is doing research on the company. Go to their website. Maybe connect with someone working there right now and have some questions for them on LinkedIn. Just try to find some insightfulness into the company and also into the hiring managers. You're going to see if you can find the hiring manager on LinkedIn, find out something with his background. The question could be like, oh, I see you've been here for 5 years. What do you like about XYZ company? Something like that. These sorts of questions, not getting too personal with questions, but certainly questions that would be insightful, that you are really have done your work. I mean, they want people that are really interested. And one way to show your interest is to have good questions. So don't, by the way, I'll probably mention it later, but don't ask about money. That's something you discuss after they give you an interview, after they give you an offer. Any questions? Okay. Okay.
No questions.
No questions. Okay. Just before the in-person interview, one thing I always used to do is loosen up with some exercise. I typically when I be doing an interview, I typically be, leaving my company I'd been at initially. I go somewhere to change my clothes into something a bit more dressy. Again, this would be back in the day when ties, white shirts, and jackets and all that were expected to be worn at interviews. Today, it's a little bit more freer. Just before walking in the door, I would loosen up with exercise. I'd move my muscles around. I would get pumped. I would also do a few tongue twisters just to make sure when I walked into that door, I was engaged with whoever I would be seeing. And it's important to be engaged with everybody, by the way, not just the person who's asking you questions. So it's very important. It's very important to be nice, pleasant, and leave a great impression with everybody at the interview. And not only the people in the interview, but I remember years ago seeing that if you're not even nice and friendly to the receptionist at a company, if you walk in and you're kind of offstandish, that might have a negative impression on the hiring managers as well. I've seen hiring managers after an interview go to receptionists. Well, you saw that young fellow. What did you think of them? And if the answer came back, well, not too much, chances were that was the end of it for that person. So make sure that if you walk in, be pleasant, come in with a smile, ask them how they're doing. How's your day going? Oh, it's a beautiful day outside. This looks like a nice place. Say positive things that will leave them with a positive impression of you. Coming off with as a smart ass will not likely get you the job. Leave your ego at home. You're not there to be know-it-all. They're not looking to hire a know-it-all. They're looking for someone they can bring in, they can mold into what they're looking for. This is especially true for recent grads. And if you come across that way, it won't work for you. Leave your ego at home. Okay? When listening, use the triple nod strategy. So every time someone asks a question, nod at them so they understand that you're listening to them. Don't make any sounds. I mean, some people tend to go, Best not to do that. Just make a nod or a triple nod just to show them that you're there listening. A little hand gesturing doesn't hurt. It reinforces your communication skills. I find a lot of times I'm working with my hands as I am right now. When you're talking to someone, maintain eye contact. If asked a question by one of the interviewers, say his name first before answering the question. Okay, so that's why it's so important to get everybody's names so you know who you're talking to. When you come in and there's 3 people sitting there, try to write down their names just so when they ask a question, say, "Thank you, Fred. That's a very good question." And then go ahead and answer the question. Then there's another type of question called the situation behavior question. There's several examples in Dropbox, and the thing about it is, if there's HR people in your interview, I can almost guarantee you 100% they'll be asking you behavioral questions. The HR people are not going to be able to interpret typically your answers to technical questions, if any are asked, but they are there usually to evaluate you, and these are the questions they'll be asking for. There's a document in there about these questions. I suggest you study that, make sure you have answers, you understand the questions thoroughly, and you have the answers. I've had a lot of people come back to me after an interview and say, Rick, you know that document on situation behavior? They asked me 2 of those questions. And I said, how did you do? Well, I read it, I studied it, I made up my own answers, and it really helped. And then I find out, 2 weeks later, they're getting a job offer. So it's very important that you answer these correctly. If you just come and wing it, chances are you could screw it up. You don't want to do that. So for example, one question might be, this is one of the very common questions, tell me about the last time you made a mistake. Very, very interesting question. Don't choose a fatal mistake. If it was a mistake that, oh, I just cost the company $100,000, don't tell them that mistake. Don't choose a mistake where you didn't put in the effort, okay, because you were lazy or you didn't put enough effort in. Select an experience where you lacked experience or knowledge, okay? Choose a scenario where you learned an important lesson. Explain what you did to fix the error, because everybody makes mistakes, but the question is, how did you react to the mistake? If you just talk about blaming someone else for the mistake, if you say, well, I let the boss figure it all out, I let the senior engineer figure it all out, then it's probably not helping you in any way. So I would go through those questions very, very carefully and make sure you understand them. The Dropbox will be available to you. You can keep the links somewhere, and it's perfectly fine to use it anytime you need it. The other question that's very, very common, and it's usually with sometimes the hiring manager asks it, so tell me about yourself. I suggest you develop a script, rehearse to the point that it doesn't sound like you're reading or bringing up achievements okay, sorry, let me say that again. Develop a script, rehearse it to the point that it doesn't sound like you're reading, and bring up the achievements at your current and past jobs. Don't mention anything about your personal situation. Don't talk about your cars, your kids, your wife. Don't talk about any of that stuff. Keep it focused on your career. They don't want to know what high school you went to. You could mention a little bit about university and your success at university. You can talk about that, but don't talk about anything prior to that. And don't talk about things like your car. I remember asking that once of somebody in a job interview because he was so nervous, and I saw he had a car hobby. I asked about it, and I was later told off by the vice president that that's not allowed. And so you got to just keep it to the work experience. You got to be very careful. There's actually a very good YouTube video link in Dropbox. Hopefully it's still there. That link is still on YouTube. The fellow talks about how he answered some questions. So I suggest you do that. If you can't find that particular one, there's other so tell me about yourself questions that you can find on YouTube, and hopefully you can find a good one that sort of gets you prepared for it. Never ever answer I don't know to a question. If they ask you a question, you don't say I don't know. Never take a negative stance on a question. For example, do you know Microsoft Publisher? And you don't say sorry I don't. But what you could say is Microsoft Publisher. That's on the top of my to-do list to learn. I'll start working on it immediately. And when I'm back for the second interview, the answer to the same question will be yes. So even if there is something that you don't have, tell them you're going to learn it. You're going to have it all figured out by the next time you see them. Now, obviously, if you've never taken an AutoCAD before, it's going to take you more than a couple of weeks to figure it out. Although if you have other CAD experience, I understand that AutoCAD is not that difficult to learn, but don't go negative on questions. That will, you could lose the job because of that. Having said that, you know Publisher, or you'll learn Publisher, for example, gives them a reason, a better reason to hire you than if you said, no, I don't have it. Okay. Any questions, anybody? No.
No questions, but you can use the hand raise feature if you would prefer to ask your questions verbally. Thank you.
Okay. There's certain things you should never tell the interviewer. Don't share your personal situation. I think I talked about financial, family, religion. It's illegal to ask about these questions in Ontario, by the way. So they're not going to be asking it. Don't even give them that information. About negative issues. Yeah, if you had a bad experience at your last job, don't talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. They may think that, oh yeah, you may say it was the company was bad, but who really knows? They may think, well, maybe it was the person that was bad. Maybe it's not the company that was bad. Don't come across negative desperately that you need a job or a job change. Don't make yourself look desperate. It doesn't look good on you. Don't talk about salary expectations until an offer is on the table. Sometimes this is asked for in the first interview, because sometimes they want to weed out certain people that are above their budget. So my answer to that is that they're very insistent about having that. Just say you'll look at any reasonable offer. Okay, that's normally paid for a job of this type. I mean, if you're going to reject, you can reject the salary offer later. Of course, if you're unemployed now, my usual suggestion is take the job, no matter if the salary is poor. Then you can just keep on. You can get a job, paying the bills, and you can later change jobs down the road if the expectations are low. A lot of times, companies will hire people. They'll start them off at very low, but if they are working hard, they're doing a good job for the company, you can get your salary increased pretty quickly. Usually, it's not always the case. Some companies are just cheap; they don't want to pay anybody. But good companies will typically increase the pay as time goes on. Never talk about your long-term plans, especially if it involves leaving the company. I had one mentee years ago, it's got to be 8 or 9 years ago, and I helped her get a job with a company that I'm aware of. They hired her, and she wasn't happy with the money she was making there. And she went and interviewed with another job. And she mentioned she wanted to leave the company because of money. And then she gave the company gave as a reference the owner of the company she wanted to leave. Well, that basically got her fired. So big mistake. Never do that, please. So here's some typical interview questions you can ask to interviews. I have a lot more in the notes, by the way. Okay, so these are a few of them. How would you describe the responsibilities of this position? Tell me about some of the challenges that would face me in this job. And this is something you must ask, especially if there is a second interview. What qualities are you looking for in the person you are hiring to join the company? And if I'm hired, how would I be interacting with you and your department? What would be my assigned goal for the first 6 months and the first 12 months? This is a big question I've always personally asked when I was being hired for jobs. Like, what are my goals for the first 6 months? What are my goals for the next 6 months? What would be your expectations and your measures for success? So these questions get them thinking. These questions get them thinking, and these are good questions. Don't ask about, well, do you have a baseball team, or how long is your lunch breaks for? Do I get a coffee break at 10 o'clock? These sort of nothing questions aren't going to make you look better. But asking questions that really dig into what the job's about shows that you're really interested in the job, and you've gotten to a point your interest is so high, you want to get answers to good questions. So another one would be, what's your biggest challenges of the job? what is the typical work week? Is overtime expected? A lot of times in consulting, they expect a lot of overtime, and if you're not prepared to put that sort of overtime in, maybe that job isn't for you. Okay. Do you provide, another one could be, do you provide continuing education opportunities for your employees? That's a great way to see what sort of company is, what the companies that provide education opportunities, and they go into some detail about how it all works, are usually better companies that would answer, no, we really don't have anything. Or perhaps if a good seminar comes up and you want to attend, we might be able to finance it. So it's a wishy-washy answer, or it's the answer is no. I would say it's probably not the best job to go for, especially if you already have a job. You don't want to go into a company that's worse than one you're at now. So I would say this is an important question to evaluate the company. Another question could be, if I'm extended a job offer, how soon could I start? Not such a critical one, but it's an important. What's the most important thing I should accomplish in the first 180 days? What's the best part of working for this company? And at the end of it, say, are there any other questions that I can answer for you? There's a lot more in my Dropbox folder, which you have access. I would say 3 or 4 questions max, but if you can, you can ask them if you had time, could you ask a few more? If they say no, that's fine. If they say yes, keep on going. If they say yes, chances are they're very interested in you. So that will be a good sign. Listen enthusiastically, respond positively and passionately to their questions. Okay. What managers are really looking for? They're really looking for, they want to make sure you understand the job. They want to make sure you can do the job. They want to make sure that you will do the job, that you're not a hiring risk, because there's nothing worse than bringing someone in and you have to let them go 3 months later or 5 months later, or they're so uninterested in the job that they find a new job in 7 or 8 months. Basically, all the money you invested as a manager has gone down the drain, because the chances are the productivity in those first number of months is pretty low. So you basically and you have to go back through this whole hiring process again, which is a big, big job and something that most managers don't like doing. So I would suggest that you've got to be able to convince them that you can look after these things. You're not a risk. You understand the job. You can do the job, and that you will do the job. Okay. Okay. I mentioned this earlier before. Get the email address for everybody you speak with for thank you email and follow-up email. So a lot of people will send out thank you emails, and all it says is thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. That's okay, but I don't think that should be the end of it. Okay. You could say things, I really want the job. Okay. Again, don't ask about salary. Now I think I have another slide. So post-interview, okay, let me get this. Within 24 hours, send the email, need a little editing here. Send a thank you email followed by a letter or a card in the mail. I would suggest a card, by the way. If you're going to send something in the mail, send a thank you card. Make sure it's, it says thank you on it. You can buy those at drugstores, dollar stores. They have thank you cards there. Okay. And write something about the job interview or about the company that is positive. So I really enjoyed meeting with you, Fred. I found you very intelligent, and I think you'd be a great guy to work for. Okay. You have a lot of passion in the job. And you're a great guy to work for. Whatever it is that's positive about Fred or positive about the company, please mention it in the thank you email or letter. Again, letter would be better. Card's even better than a letter. You can also feel, now, if you had an answer you provided during the question and you were thinking about afterwards, says, geez, I wish I hadn't answered it that way. I really wasn't a great answer. You could say something like, after reflecting about the XY job, I believe that my answer is, and provide a better answer. That your first answer wasn't very good. Just provide a better answer. Because I've been through several interviews where I said, I could have said something a little bit differently than I did, and maybe this would be better. So after that, maybe put that in there. It will help your chances of getting the job. You can also mention a success story or some other personal factor commonality that you think the interviewer would have interest. Now, when I say personal fact, I don't mean about your cars or your home or your wife or kids, but something about your personality that would attract them to you. Okay. Any questions, by the way?
Yeah, a question was sent to me directly. It says, how do hiring managers ascertain one's ability to do the job without any hands-on assessment during an interview? Right. Yeah, that's it.
I didn't quite get that.
How are they able to tell that you can do the job when you are not assessed on that skill set during an interview?
Well, a lot of it could be based on your resume. If they feel your resume is adequate and it basically talks about it, maybe the personality is all they're really looking for in this interview. So that's part of it. It could be your personality is what kills you in an interview. If you don't have the right personality for them, if you're not answering the questions very well, you're being very shy, you're not really coming across as someone who's friendly and professional, that could kill you. And quite frankly, a lot of engineers are kind of shy. And a lot of times their shyness doesn't really help them when they're out there interviewing. Okay. Hopefully that answers the question. Any other questions?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now getting back to the thank you letter or note, in the last paragraph, mention how much and why you like the company, the people you met, and the fact that you feel that you can add value to the company over the next many years. So it look like, this is making sense for the company to hire you. You like the company, you like the people, and you want to add value to the company. What more could a hiring manager ask for when they're out there hiring people? They're not looking for people that are going to stick around for 6, 8 months, a year and a half. They're looking for long-term employees, because to train people to do things their way takes time and effort, and it's not really cost effective. So by just stating that you want to be there for many years, I'm not saying you have to be there for many years, but just by stating that will help you in your interviews. If you didn't do a letter, make sure it's not more than 1 page, properly business formatted and signed with a pen and put into a number 10 envelope, or emailed if the interviewer was working remotely. So if the interviewers were remotely, then you'll have to make a decision whether you want to send it by snail mail or send it by email. Certainly letters do have a greater impact on people than do emails. When I worked, and I haven't worked in many years now, I would get, 150, 200 emails every day. Whereas letters in my inbox, maybe 2 or 3 a week, maybe even less. So letters do stand out. And once you open them up and read them, or if it's a card, you read it. If it's a card, you'll probably leave it on your desk. You leave it opened up on your desk to just enjoy the picture in the front. If it's a letter and it's put on nice paper, it's nicely written, it's well professionally written, it will help you as well. So that's what I prefer. I prefer the mail route. It's a bit more work, it's a bit more expensive, but if it gets you a job, hey, it's well worth the investment. Second interview. Some jobs will require a second interview. What you want to talk about, you may want to talk about the strategies that you would use to solve the issues discussed in the first interview. They may have brought us some issues they're having. You may have asked some questions, and you may want to discuss some of the strategies but you have to bring it up. You have to be forthcoming with these. Okay. Companies are interested in your skills in leadership, teamwork. And before you have the interview, review and write down some of your past experiences and successes, so you can discuss these samples in the interview. This is better than just winging it, as I talked about before. Be prepared for this interview. Make sure you come in with your bag of success stories. Again, online interview. Again, this is probably something we've already talked about. I should probably pull this slide off. Now, here's a strategy that recently worked for one of my Black engineers mentees. What the strategy was, and it didn't quite work exactly like this, but it worked out fairly closely. Not all hires work out, but after 80 to 100 days of receiving the no thank you letter about the job you interviewed, send a letter to the executive. So after 80 days, tell them you're interested in tell them you're still interested in the company in the first few lines of the letter. Now, this fellow who actually called me up, I guess about a month or so ago, he had an interview with a company in Kitchener. They liked him, but they didn't offer him the job. So he basically took this strategy. About 3 months later, he wrote them a note to the same hiring manager, and the hiring manager came back and said, we really liked you. We have another job for you. He came in and he interviewed with that job. They gave him an offer. He accepted it, and he's been working there ever since. And from what I understand, after talking to him, he's really enjoying it there. He just did a presentation up in Huntsville for the company. It's a big Canadian multinational company with offices all around the world, and he could do very, very well there. So if things don't work out, try coming back to him. I had another fellow, he had just completed his university at Ontario Tech University. I've been helping him for a few weeks with applying to jobs. And then he tells me this story where he almost got the job at a company in Markham, with a company that makes or actually sells. I guess they sell meters, monitoring equipment for the water wastewater industry. He says he almost got the job, but they hired someone else. I said, well, go back to them. Go back to them. Call the guy, send him a letter saying you're really still very interested in the company. It turns out for them, the fellow they did end up hiring didn't work out. They let him go. And with this young fellow I've been helping, sending in a note saying he's still very interested in the company, he got the job. And he worked there for a while. He worked there for quite a while. Now he's got more of an engineering job. This one was a little bit more on the technical sales side of things. He got a very good engineering job up at Bruce Peninsula. So it's a strategy that doesn't work. It's not always going to work, but you never know what may work. Consider also, another thing you can do is consider the hiring manager as a person in your network. If they like you, they may try to help you. And that does happen. We talked last week, I think we briefly touched on marketing letters. And I had one lady, she had just had her second child. She had a PhD in environmental engineering. She sent a letter to a fellow. He really liked her letter. He was a manager in one of the consulting firms in Waterloo, Kitchener area. And he came back and said, I don't really need anybody right now, but I have a friend at another company. He's looking for somebody. Do you mind if I send your letter to him? She said, sure, go ahead. She sent the letter to the fellow. They hired her, and she got the job, and that started her career again after having a couple of kids and being out of the job force for several years. And now she's a project manager at the city of Toronto, which is, well, it's a good paying job, that's for sure. They do pay very well over there. So consider that.
There are questions.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm at the end of my presentation.
Oh, okay.
How about a question?
There are three questions, but I would ask two, which are follow-up to your last slide, then I'll come back to the first one. So someone says, can you still do this if you don't hear from the company? I think is referring to the follow-up email months after they've sent you a rejection.
Okay.
That's what she's
Yeah, you can do it even if you're rejected. Sure, go ahead and do it. Now, also on follow-up letters, if you've had an interview, like one or two interviews, you send out your thank you letter. You can, if you don't hear back from them in 2 weeks, you can always send a follow-up letter. Basically, and my suggestion usually is go back through the job, go back to the posting that you have, and hopefully you kept a copy of it, like I discussed last week. Go back to that, look at the main bullet points of what they were looking for, and then respond to each bullet point individually. So, for example, if they say 5 years experience in the water wastewater industry, your answer to that would be, I have 6.5 years working in the water wastewater industry as a consultant, et cetera, et cetera. So you go back and you prepare a letter where you say, listen, I'm going to look at your initial bullet points, and this is how I'm responding to them. That by that way, you come back to mind. You come back into their mind. They may be in a situation they don't know who to hire. They like 2 or 3 people, and they don't know who they like. And if you come back with here's some good information for you to help you make a decision, not necessarily to state that, but just providing that information, that may get you the job.
okay.
Hopefully that answers the question. If it doesn't, please ask another one.
Okay. The person says thank you, so that says a lot. That answers the question. Yeah. Please, does one respond to comments from the panelists about being how does one respond to comments from the panelists about being overqualified for the role during a live interview?
Well, I think a lot of recent immigrants have that issue too. And you have to explain to them you're willing to start over from scratch, if necessary, to get a foot in the door in Canada. And you could say something like, I feel that I'm so good at what I do that within a reasonable length of time, I'll be promoted to a position where I can successfully help the company. So don't let that be a deterrent. A lot of people come here and they take positions that are lower than what they had before. I remember having a fellow, he was from Iran. He got a job. I worked with him. He got a job as a project manager. Now, in his last job in Iran, he had a staff of 200 people. He was like a senior manager at the company he worked at. He got a job in Vancouver area as a project manager, and they were concerned about that, and I'm sure eventually he'll become a senior manager again. He was a really sharp guy, had great people skills. And never forget about the people skill issue. That's always big in this country, and I'm sure he'll be promoted. So I don't think you should let that question say, or that statement deter you from saying, I can add value here, and eventually I hope you'll feel that I am adding enough value that you'll be able to promote me to a better position, something to that effect.
Okay. The third question here is it okay to ask about subsequent steps of the recruitment process when asking the hiring team questions?
Is it okay to ask about
subsequent steps of the recruitment process?
Of the equipment process?
Recruitment process.
Oh.
Of the hiring process.
Oh, the hiring process. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's fine. You can ask. That doesn't hurt. I don't see that being a big issue. It will allow you to plan out what you want to do, when you want to send thank you notes, when you want to send follow-up letters or emails. It certainly can hurt to know more about the process than knowing less. So I'd say, sure, you can ask about that. I don't think that should be your primary question. I think the other questions I mentioned earlier are probably going to make you look a lot better than if you just ask the question, so tell me about your recruitment process, because they're not hiring you based on their They're not hiring you because of your ability to ask about the recruitment process. But if you're asking questions about what do you want me to be doing in the next 6 months, how will my successes be measured? Like those questions I suggested, I think that will make a much more positive impact than tell me about your recruitment process. So you could ask it. It could be like your last question, but I wouldn't make it your primary question. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I hope so too. And the questions to ask the panelists, how many questions do you think is good enough?
Well, I think asking 3 or 4 good questions is great. As I mentioned earlier, maybe that person wasn't online at that time. As I mentioned earlier, if you can ask a few more, that would be great. But I would first ask them if they have time for a few more. So if they say, sure, ask a few more questions, I have another 20 minutes. If they say that, then go ahead and ask some more questions. I've given you a lot of questions in this presentation, which you'll have access to. You can certainly copy and paste that into a sheet of paper you bring with you to the interview.
Okay. Is there anyone that wants to ask Rick questions directly on interviewing skills or even what we touched on last week? You can indicate by raising your hand and go ahead.
Yeah, any questions at all? Anybody has?
Don't see any hands up for this time.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay, there's a question. It says, if you can't understand their accent, how do you explain that politely?
Well, I would just ask them to repeat it. Usually with a difficult accent, if the person repeats it a few times, and you're probably not the first person to say it to them, they'll repeat it. They may say it a little bit more slowly. But the worst thing is if you're asked a question that you really don't fully understand, you may get an answer that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So I would repeat it. I would ask them to repeat it until you fully understand the question. There's no harm in doing that. It's all about communicating. And if they're not communicating to you, it's going to make you look really silly if you communicate back worse than what they're communicating. So this is something you have to do.
Yeah.
I imagine that could be a problem too these days. That can be a problem.
But one simple thing that I think helps me, not because I may not hear the accent, is that using my headphones helps me better on virtual calls than without the headphones. So I don't go for a virtual call without my headphone. Another thing that can help is writing. Take note of the keywords while they speak. So when you want to ask that you repeat the question, you can rephrase that. Oh, I heard you mention this, but I would like you to ask the question a second time so I'm sure that I fully understand your question. And hopefully by the time they say it the second time, with you paying attention, your headphones on, you should be able to pick as much as is needed to answer correctly. I don't know if that would help.
I think that's great. I think those are great suggestions. I really am big on headphones and microphones. Trouble is, a lot of people buy inexpensive laptops and they have poor headphones, and they have poor speakers, they have poor video quality, poor video cameras. When you buy a $500 or $600 laptop, you're not going to get the best equipment. So if you do have that laptop, spend a little extra money and buy good equipment to go with it. Like I say, for $100, you can get a good set of headphones. You can get a good setup, get a half decent video camera, and that may make the biggest difference between you getting a job and you not getting a job. Believe it or not. And for $100, if it gets you a job one day faster, it's paid for itself already. because you're going to get more than $100 the first day of work. So
Mhm.
I think you'd be crazy not to invest in it. Invest some lights, maybe if you need lights when you're doing Zoom calls. You can do that for under $50 as well. You don't have to spend a ton of money on it either. So it's good investment. I know there, like I said, there's been several people I said, go get this equipment. I can't see you properly. You look funny. You look weird. You sound weird. You can't understand me. I can't understand you. Make sure you invest the money. And it does make a big difference. Believe it or not, it does make a big difference.
Yeah. And again, if there is that communication gap, it also reduces your chances of getting the job because the hiring team, they feel the truth is they would interact with you every day. And from the first time they're interacting with you, there's so much communication gap. So how would the job get done if they hire you, even if you have the skill set? So
Yeah.
the investment is worth it, like Rick
Oh,
said.
yeah. I think we discussed it with you when you were job hunting, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good.
Uh, yeah, so there's another question. It says, which certification can an international engineer do before entering the job market in North America?
One of the biggest problems I find with engineers coming in is they don't understand the standards. If you're, for example, a civil engineer and you don't know the Canadian Building Code or the Ontario Building Code, you're at a big disadvantage. So my suggestion is learn the codes, take code courses. It's going to be hard to get certified on these things, but just by showing on your resume that you've taken a code course or you studied the code makes it easier. You have to understand the codes in every country and province are different than other places in the world. You may be a great structural engineer, but if you don't design to the code, your drawings will never be approved by the building inspection department. Same thing through with, I was helping an electrical engineer a few weeks ago. He got a job. He didn't know the Ontario Electric Safety Code. And after a few weeks there, it was pretty evident to the owner, and he was let go. Now, the owner didn't say you gotta let him go for that reason, but it was pretty evident that he really didn't understand the code. He never taken the time to learn the code. And that put him at a total disadvantage. I think we got him convinced now that he has to take a code course, or at least go buy the book, which I think you can get as a PDF for $200, and to study this code and understand where everything is. So when a project does come up, he knows at least where to look in the code, because he was asking about some questions, some electrical engineering questions about how much wire can you stuff in a conduit, and there's code requirements for that. You have to understand these requirements. So knowing the code is what you really have to know. For example, if you're a mechanical engineer and your area is HVAC, heating, air conditioning, having knowledge of ASHRAE standards, the ASHRAE standards could be a big help. So you've got to understand what we work to in this country or what we work to in each of the provinces. That's all I can say right now.
Yeah, I was saying that another place where you can get the required information for the kind of job you're looking for is the job descriptions that come out for that kind of job. So what is needed would be in as many job descriptions as possible. So once you identify that, oh, every time I look at job descriptions, I match, say, 50% of the skill sets. Which ones are the gaps? And then you begin to look for where to fill and how to fill those gaps. Is it codes? Is it certification?
Yeah.
And then,
We talked about that a bit last week, and that's
yeah,
right. It's always a good idea if you're looking for a job, search the whole North American, because Canada and the States are very similar in this. Decide what different job descriptions have. What I do is I take a job description, I copied it onto a Word document, all the job descriptions. So I may have 10 pages of job descriptions. Okay. And then I put it through a software package that will then identify key words in these job descriptions. And when I start seeing certain key elements, you can do it by hand too. You don't need software. As you start seeing a repetitive feature that if people are looking for, then that is a hint that if you don't have it, you better learn it, because you're not going to get a job unless you have these different qualities. So that's very, very important to mention, is you know, especially if you just come to the country, maybe your last job in some other country you had there for 10 or 12 years, you have a lot of experience, but you haven't written a resume for the last 10 years and you're just starting out. Find out what they're looking for when they're looking for people that have to do the type of work that you have done, and make sure that you address as many things as possible. Even for sometimes 50% is not enough. Sometimes you need more than 50%. A lot of it's got to do with experience levels too. If you have 50% of what they're looking for and you have 10 years experience, you're going to come across better than a person who has, say, 70% of what they're looking for with 2 years experience. So it's very important to give them what they want, basically. Basically tell them what they want to hear when you're doing, and I think I mentioned that quite a bit last week. So yeah, you're right. Oh yeah, I agree. I'm going to have you teaching this course soon, Oye.
What?
I'm going to have you teaching this course.
You should have. No, 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 no. No, there's always something new to learn from you, so I don't take it for granted.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so anybody here, I'm always open to questions. If you want me to, I've been reviewing resumes this week. People approached me over the last few days to review their resumes. I've been doing that. I can help with that. I can help you when you get an opportunity. I can get you set up for that. If you see an opportunity you want to go after, I can have discussions with you on what I suggest you do in order to get the interview. And if you do get an interview, I can also, of course, I'll suggest you go through this presentation in my Dropbox folder. And in addition, I can do mock interviews with you. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 interviews before the person comes across really well. A lot of times I get people that are very shy. They don't really say very much in the interview, mock interview. I can't hear them. I can't see them. There's all these issues, or I'm looking up their nose, or, you know, all these different issues come up, and we try to resolve it over the time I spend doing mock interviews, with the hope that when the real interview comes up, you're going to do so well that they're going to offer you the job, and then that will be the end of that story. You're now on your way to being successful.
Yeah, you already answered the last question. Someone asked how they can get one-on-one consultation with you.
You can contact me on Zoom, or I'll give you my email address again, which is, I'll put it up here. Gmail. Okay, send that out. Here it is. So you can contact me. Just mention how you know about me. I get emails from people I've never heard of before. So just say, I saw you on this presentation, or I was in the mentoring session, or whatever it was. And just so I can and I'm happy to help. I've had several this week. And I'm happy to help you where I can.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rick. Actually, there was an interview that Rick held my hand for presentation, and the good thing about his participation when you're preparing for interviews, the things you overlook or you don't seem to know are important, you would quickly pick them out. Years of experience, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how he sees these things.
Yeah.
And though I did get that.
You're one of my success stories. You're one of my success stories.
Yeah, this particular one I'm talking about, I didn't get it, but I knew that I gave it. Yeah, I gave it a very good shot, and I reached out to them asking what happened. Tell me where I did it wrong, and I'm willing to make amends. And the director said I actually didn't do anything wrong. I was one of the best. So if I'm the best, why didn't you give me the job? So I don't know for what reasons, but what I benefited from that interaction with the organization was he's now part of my network, and many months later, he still sent me emails. If you need any job in the city where we live, I'll be willing to recommend you. This was from being an interviewer to being someone in my network. So these things work. We just have to put ourselves out there. Lekon, do you have any questions, or if any other person has anything to say?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I have no question.
Okay. Rick, are we rounding up or?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. This is a shorter session than the one last, which was kind of a rush getting it done in 2 hours. So
Yeah.
if anybody has any questions about that further on, I'm happy to answer them. Doesn't have to be today, but some other time. You know, I'm not planning to give up this hobby I started 13 years ago yet. So, you know, please ask away. It won't go on forever, but it will go on for a while anyways.
We want it for as long as you are able to provide the service to us. And
Yeah.
for everyone here in this room today, his services are free. It's pro bono, and it would give you as much value as though you paid for the services. So don't shy away. Oh, it's going to cost me, or you're scared of even asking. It's for free, and it's an excellent service that will take you to where you want to be. And a lot of people within our network that got to know themselves through RIG have even moved to other jobs, you know, right after that. So it's always a very beneficial relationship. So this session was brought to you by the Training Subcommittee of Black Engineers of Canada. We have these kind of sessions from time to time. We have sessions targeted towards training technical skill gaps, as well as soft skill gaps too, where we have panel session with engineering leaders in the industry that come to talk to us about very subtle things that we may not pay attention to in the workplace, especially in Canada. And then we have trainings like this, workshops like this that teach you what steps to take in order for you to apply for jobs and also get them, especially for new graduates and for professionals that are just moved into Canada and they're struggling with settling in Canada. My name is Oye, and with me today was my co-chair, Lekon Razak Mohamed, and we hope to see you again. We dropped a feedback survey form in the chat box. Please fill it, give us your feedback anonymously so that we can improve on our processes. Thank you so much for this session, and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
So, Oye,
Yeah.
how was it?
Good. I invited one of my colleagues from work, and she has some good feedback to give.
Oh, did he? Oh, good, good. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Hopefully it helped somebody.
Yeah. She says that was very insightful. I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Good, good. Now, do you want me to send you the link?
Sure.
We'll send it
Yeah.
out. I'm going to get rid of the folder or the link from last week.
Okay.
And then I'll just send the link to the whole package of stuff. I could have talked about the Dropbox a bit more. I sort of forgot that.
Okay,
But
that's fine.
I'll send it to you, and maybe you can just explain that, you know, all the stuff that was discussed is
Mhm.
in this Dropbox folder, and to
Okay.
use it as you can.
Okay, sure. I will. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hey, take
Thank
care.
you.
Nice seeing you again.
Yeah, same here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.